this is Inga. Welcome back to Condiment Craze, this journey I am embarking on to explore the full potential of your favorite condiments, and today we're talking mayo. So right off the bat, I have to admit I am a bit of a mayo prude. I don't really enjoy the taste of mayo, but I do believe in the potential that it has. And so in this past week, I've been trying to explore the many ways that I can cook with mayo without being able to taste it. So this video is a little different in that almost everything I'm making from here on are things that I have never cooked before. So the first thing I wanted to test out was, well, two things. One, how well does mayo work as a marinade? And two, does mayo actually make mashed potatoes better? Which is what brings me to my first dish, chicken and potatoes. Specifically grilled chicken and mashed potatoes. So I've heard before that mayo is a secret trick to making bites of meat taste more juicy, more tender, and this is because of the way it can lock in moisture and how it also supposedly improves the browning on the surface. So to really put that to the test, I'm going with some chicken breast here because it is a type of cut that usually dries out pretty fast, and I'm just tenderizing it a little bit here, mostly to make sure that the entire piece has around the same thickness. And for the marinade, I'm actually mixing the mayo with some homemade chimichurri, and I just love how easily the two incorporated together, which I feel like then makes for a very even distribution of flavor, right? Because everything's balanced out. I'm also adding in a bit of cheese for more of those umami notes before I'm pretty much just kind of, going in there and slathering this mixture all over the chicken breasts. And then while that's off to the side marinating, I'm getting started on the mashed potatoes, going with some Yukon Gold potatoes here because they have this sort of natural buttery flavor that I really enjoy. I'm also mashing them with the skin on because I actually really like the texture it gives to the mashed potatoes. I also love how it ends up looking a little more rustic. And then right into this too, I'm adding a good amount of mayo, which instantly lightens the color of the potatoes before I'm adding in some more butter and milk. I felt like it was getting a little too liquidy. The color seemed really light, but after a little more time on the stovetop, I do actually end up with this very pleasantly smooth and creamy texture. Like you go right in there with a spoon and it just folds perfectly. Serve it up with a drizzle of olive oil, some fresh thyme, Parmesan, and black pepper before I'm going back to the chicken that's now been marinating for a while, and I'm grilling them right over the stovetop. The crazy thing is seeing just how easily the golden brownless surface came through, and also just like how beautifully the crust developed on the outside. As you can imagine, I was very excited to slice this up after letting it rest for a little bit because I could already feel how tender the chicken was, even though I had also felt that I cooked this for a little longer than usual. The meat was truly so juicy and just fork tender in a way that I feel like I rarely get to experience without making sure that I'm brining the breast meat beforehand or feeling like I'm almost undercooking it just to make sure the texture is right. It went really well with the mashed potatoes, which kind of had this almost like satin finish in your mouth. It was very good. I do feel like I tasted a little bit of the mayo. Maybe it was just like this slight tang there, but that did not stop me from eating more. Another fun thing about adding mayo to mashed potatoes too is how it's able to almost keep its smooth texture even after spending some time in the fridge, because where butter, which is usually what you only put in mashed potatoes, solidifies when the temperature is cooler, while mayo stays the same, which I thought was pretty cool. The second thing I'm testing is chicken and potatoes part 2. Now hear me out. This time I'm experimenting with chicken wings and roasted potatoes. So mayo is sometimes recommended as a hack for when you're roasting like a whole chicken or turkey, like you rub it all over the skin and it just helps it crisp up beautifully. And it also has a similar effect on potatoes. And once again, you can see what the mayo does allow is for all the spices and ingredients I'm putting in to be sort of evenly distributed throughout the marinade, the way oil might not be able to because of its thinner consistency and how it ends up just being a little slippery. So in here, there's rosemary, garlic, paprika, cayenne pepper, lemon juice, and even some hot sauce for spice. And you can actually see how they cling onto the piece of chicken wing because of Mayo's thicker consistency. The same goes for the potatoes that I cut into half-moon slices and coated with mayo again, some Dijon mustard, fresh thyme, garlic powder, onion powder. So I also thought I'd try a different way of roasting these, where I'm putting the potatoes spread out on the bottom of the roasting pan and then putting a cooling rack on top and roasting the chicken wings right on there so that all and any of those like fat, flavorful drippings will be soaked up by the potatoes underneath. So from a scientific standpoint, it makes sense why mayo can add so much color and flavor to the dish, which is the same reaction responsible for bread tasting toasty, coffee tasting robust, and like meat tasting charred. And sure enough, both the potatoes and the wings came out with this gorgeous golden brown, slightly charred crust. And I actually feel like it came out especially well on the fries because they had this wonderful crispiness on the outside without the usual oil-soaked greasiness. And once again too, both items were tender on the inside. The fries were super fluffy despite its crazy crispy crust that I really liked. And I can truly say that I was very impressed. Now I feel like I gotta test it out with a whole chicken. Who knows? Moving on to the next meal, burgers and buns and sauce. So mayo and burger isn't unheard of as a sauce, but mayo in patties specifically, that's new to me. So I was doing some research and I found this article that suggests folding your mayo into your ground meat before forming patties. And the way it works is because by adding mayo, you're adding extra moisture and flavor into the patties itself. You're essentially adding extra fat, which is then how you'll end up with a juicy burger every time. I was a little skeptical, but I had to give it a try. And I will have to say, even though it really doesn't look as visually appealing during the making of process, because mixing it all together with my hand was also a very new experience. It was a little bit like making slime. What it does do, however, is immediately giving my burger patties that like iconic golden brown crust, which aesthetically looked incredibly pleasing. And then I thought, why not take this a step further and push the boundaries of mayo a little bit in this burger, which brings me to what I now dub the ultimate mayo burger, because there's mayo in the patty, there's mayo on the buns, and there's mayo in the sauce. The sauce I'm making is my go-to version of a typical fast food restaurant sauce, except I went with truffle mayo for some extra oomph. Some of you might recognize this as the prize from the first Strong Opinions video. Mixing it up with some ketchup, mustard, diced pickles, garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika. Similarly with my brioche buns, I'm toasting them with a thin layer of truffle mayo only, and that's really all I needed to do. I will say that going with a dry-aged ground beef patty here may have undermined the power of mayo a little bit, because dry-aged meat is already so flavorful and so tender on its own that when I added mayo to this and tasted it, it almost felt a little too rich. So this is an item that I definitely want to do again, maybe even with leaner ground beef. I feel like that could work really well. But with that said, the mayo on the buns and the mayo in the burger sauce, you can't go wrong with that. It's a very good burger. So next up, we're moving into the dessert realm, where mayo is known to do wonders for cakes. Now, I've made chocolate cakes with mayo before, and it really does make a difference in terms of moisture, texture, and taste, which is actually why I always add mayo to my chocolate cakes now. And for fun, I also did a quick test with some cake mix just to see if adding mayo made a significant difference to the same batter. And I can tell you, after a blind taste test with friends as well, the cupcakes made with mayo actually did come out fluffier. And they had this pleasant softness and depth of flavor that, like, weirdly enough, did make it feel more homemade. Mayo is the only difference. So it's with this knowledge that I wanted to see if adding mayo to pancakes actually makes pancakes better. There's this recipe from Japan that apparently went viral on Twitter back in 2017, where people were making these giant pancakes using mayo, pancake mix, and soda water. So of course, I had to try it out. And in fact, Kewpie, the beloved Japanese mayo brand, and also the mayo I'm using in this recipe, they actually did a study testing out whether mayo makes pancakes better, and their finding was the more mayo added to the pancake, the fluffier it was, the crispier it was, and therefore the more delicious it was. But the idea here is that the vinegar and emulsified fat in mayo directly affect the formation of gluten in the pancake batter. And that's what makes it softer and easier to rise, but also ensuring that the surface is crispy. And boy, oh boy, was my pancake crispy. For sure, the reaction of baking soda and carbonated water probably contributed to that too, and its height, but I do think the mayo is what allowed it to stay moist on the inside, fluffy on the inside, in a way that usually we're only able to accomplish after leaving the batter rest in the fridge overnight. The texture and flavor of this pancake too reminded me a lot of the Indonesian martabak manis. So now I'm like, ooh, what if I add mayo to a recipe for that? The next thing I'm testing are some mayonnaise. Mayonnaise and eggs. It's a soft scramble, which is usually one of my favorite ways to eat eggs. Only this time it's with versus without mayo. So conceptually, I feel like the idea of adding mayo to scrambled eggs makes sense because it's kind of like how Gordon Ramsay adds creme fraiche to his scrambled eggs because it makes it fluffier, creamier, almost like more curd-like. In this case, adding mayo does make the egg mixture much thicker with an almost slurry-like consistency that ended up increasing the cooking time. But what it does though is allow it to maintain this curd-like form for a longer time. I'm just not sure how I feel about this one because right off the bat, the eggs with the mayo do become a much more palish yellow, which is not my personal preference. And also the mayo lends to like a softer texture that is maybe better served on toast than a standalone. Or maybe I'm just used to having a slightly more firm texture with my soft scrambles. But then again, if you're someone who really appreciates and enjoys Gordon Ramsay's scrambled eggs with creme fraiche, then I feel like this might be a good one to try out. So this last one is a very fun one for me. I made some tempura. So I was on the Kewpie website, courtesy of Sean, who sent it my way after I told him about making a video on mayo. I found this recipe that calls for mayo to be added to tempura batter. And this is because when you add actual eggs to the batter, it can make it soggy and oily, but when you add mayo, it allows it to be incorporated much more easily into the batter, which allows for a crispier texture. I never thought about it before, but it makes so much sense. So the recipe calls for pre-packaged tempura mix, but I decided to just attempt and make my own, using a combination of potato starch and rice flour, a very generous squeeze of mayo, and some ice cold sparkling water to help carry it even further. The ingredients I prepped beforehand. There's a variety of vegetables I wanted to eat, some mushroom, even some leftover branzino from dinner the night before. And all I'm doing is giving them a little dusting of flour before dipping it into the tempura batter. The tempura batter did feel a little thin at first, so I'm just figuring it out as I go, adjusting as needed with each batch. And I feel like deep frying is one of those things that gets better as you move from one batch to the next. And I was really happy with how this third, fourth, fifth batches came out. They had this crispy exterior that was light and airy and not too oily and heavy at all. And you can just see how it sort of like bubbles up around the vegetables. It was just so pleasant to eat. You don't taste the mayo at all. There wasn't this problem of additional moisture. And I think for me too, because tempura batter wasn't exactly something I had envisioned when I thought about this video, that it was the most rewarding for me to see how well it came out. And so there it is, all the dishes I've made with mayo. And it's true, when you think about it, mayo really is just egg and oil and some acidity. It's salt, acid, fat, heat, and it makes so much sense why it can make so many dishes taste even better. So now I feel like I'm a little less inclined to say no to mayo. If anything, I'm probably gonna start incorporating it in a lot more of my cooking adventures. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.